on an all-new Dr. Phil.
There's been an increase in Adderall prescriptions.
Are children diagnosed and medicated too soon for ADHD?
I have so much energy, Dr. Phil!
I've seen him take a stuffed animal, whack it on things.
They break TVs. They start attacking me.
They've stayed awake for 72 hours.
And that was my breaking point.
I don't want to have to medicate my son.
Let's do it.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
This is a safe place to talk about hard things.
Stand by. We'll count you down.
Today is going to be a changing day in your life.
5, 4.
Get ready to take care of you. Thank you. Well, today I want to start with the fact that I find truly shocking, and I hope will make parents and young people out there sit up and take notice. School nurses administer more daily medication for ADHD than any other chronic health condition. Is this a troubling trend, or is this a realistic response to what they're finding in the school population? Now, in December, the Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA, warned that ADHD overprescription could be as bad as the opioid crisis. Now, Megan says her 7-year-old son has always been a handful, and when she finally made an appointment to discuss this with her physician last summer, the recommendation was, anybody want to guess? Medication. Take a look.
Hi.
Hi.
Yep, this is it.
Hi.
My son has so much energy that he is on the go from the time he wakes up to the time he goes to bed.
I have so much energy, Dr. Phil!
At 4 years old, my son was diagnosed with unspecified ADHD and moderate ODD. My son was extremely emotional, extremely defiant, extremely angry.
Hey, yeah!
And he is now 7.
Because when I don't get my way, I get mad.
I've seen him take a stuffed animal, whack it on things to take out his anger. Tell me what you used to do when you get mad.
I usually hit myself.
Go it.
I usually high-five myself hard sometimes.
My son has stolen and hoarded old trophies of mine. He will steal and hoard junk food. We had to put locks on anything that was sweet. Now our doors are all wholly and damaged, unfortunately. I have tried everything that I know of to correct my son's behavior. Timeouts, talking to him. We tried a few spankings.
Stop, be nice.
Hi!
We've tried reward systems. Nothing worked. Counselors eventually decided that my son would benefit from being on medication. Currently, my son is on 5 medications, 2 of which are related to his ADHD, both of which he takes twice a day. I feel awful that I have to medicate my son every day, but I just don't know what else to do at this point.
Well, Megan, I want to be real clear about this because you hate giving this boy pills.
Absolutely. He
You
doesn't
want
like
to just
them.
be a little boy and run around and be a little boy.
Absolutely.
And you're having to give him medication, 5 pills a day, and you don't like that. So
No.
you're not a pill-pushing parent.
No, I don't want to have to medicate my son.
What was the first thing in his behavior that caused you to think, this is not just a little boy being a little boy? Is it the things we highlighted here, the inability to modulate his behavior, hitting himself, hitting you, just kind of running around out of control?
No, he had more extreme behavior when school let out last summer. He reported seeing shadows and hearing voices. He was sneaking out of the house. He was hoarding food. He was extremely defiant. No punishment was working. We had to put locks on all our doors, as you saw in there, and he actually locked my boyfriend, which he refers to as Dad. He locked his father in our bedroom to where my boyfriend had to break down our door. He urinated in a bottle and kept it in his bedroom when he had full access to the bathroom, just because he didn't want to go to the bathroom. And there was also extreme anxiety.
All right, and this hoarding behavior led you to have to like lock up cabinets and things, and then those got torn up.
Correct.
It's because there's no barrier he won't run through.
Absolutely.
And
He found a way.
yeah, and that's the problem. It's not like you're a permissive parent. You'll set boundaries. You'll even set physical boundaries, and he'll just destroy those.
There's no stopping, and I don't think he realizes that he's not listening. He just doesn't understand that there's consequences to his actions.
And you've tried a lot of different things to get him under control. Timeouts
Yes.
didn't work. Taking things away, toys, where you made access to the toys contingent upon him behaving well. Reward good behavior, withhold him for bad behavior. You've sat down, tried to calmly, eye contact with him. Come on, let's talk about this. I want you to be good. Let's do this short periods of time. Nothing really has worked for any period of time.
Nothing. He will change for maybe a day, and then the next day it's like he's forgotten everything.
So it sounds like you've made some good choices. They just didn't work. But then I also looked at this. You've made some choices that bothered me as well. You said you can't afford daycare, and you work first shift. Your boyfriend works third shift. And so that leaves the middle part in there where he has to be resting, you're working. And so you say you just actually set out food and toys for a few hours in the day that he has to be on his own.
Only during the summer, and for that brief period, we did, yes.
Yeah.
And it wasn't ideal. I'm hoping to find another option this summer.
There's something we've got to be real clear about, so you know where I stand on this, is you say we didn't have any choice. There's always a choice.
Yes, sir, there is.
There's always a choice, and there's always a priority. And I hear parents say sometimes, well, you know, we have to work. What do you expect us to do? Well, you had a child. And when you have a child, then the child becomes the number one priority.
You're correct.
And if your job is in the way, then you get a different job. You say, well, that's the only job that we have. Then you find something else to do, or you don't have a job. But you don't put the job in front of the child. You don't put food out and toys and say you're on your own at 6 or 7 years old. That is absolutely, unequivocally unacceptable choice.
Yes.
And sometimes, and that's easy for me to say sitting here, I'm not in the trenches with you. I understand, I get that. But what I'm telling you is, I hear parents say all the time, well, what are we supposed to do? Well, you're supposed to do whatever it takes to raise the child. And they say, well, are we supposed to quit our jobs? I didn't help you make the decision to have a child. I didn't help you make the decision to get that job. All I'm telling you is that the child has to have supervision. The child has to be looked after. And if that means one of you has to get a different job, then you have to do what you have to do. But you just don't put food out on the floor where the child can reach it and some toys and say, you know, sorry, we're busy. You can't do that, particularly with a child that you know, because he's at a certain age now. You let him get a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, a little bit more creative, you can wake up and the house is on fire.
You're correct, and I appreciate you bringing that to my attention and making me realize that that was an incorrect decision on my part, so I thank you for that.
Well, that's in the past. I'm talking about what's coming up in the future.
Oh,
You
no,
can't
I
do
wasn't.
that.
No, I wasn't planning on
Yeah, you
doing
can't
that.
do
We
that in
were
the
already
future.
looking into other options for this summer.
All right, coming up, Megan says her son would throw toys at their dog and once tortured a lizard. Have the meds helped him play nice with their 14 pets? You heard that right. Not 4, 14 pets. We'll talk about that decision when we come back.
Hey, get up!
This child running wild and out of control, and then there's 14 animals running around the house. And aren't you just worn out?
Before I had a child with ADHD, I thought that parents did not know how to discipline children. I thought that they needed to be more tough with children. Ow, don't smack me, buddy. I understand now. I understand that it is absolutely a hard thing to live with. My son has heard people say he's crazy and overly energetic, and my son is not crazy by any means. He just has ADHD.
Baby has ADHD. You know, I've been at this a long time. You wouldn't guess that. I can think back as far back as the 70s when I referred to ADD and ADHD as a wastebasket diagnosis. And a wastebasket diagnosis is what we referred to as when you don't really know what's going on, there's just this kind of catch-all diagnosis that you can just say, hey, it's ADD, ADHD. And it was rendered too often and typically by people that didn't really know what it meant. Maybe a GP, maybe a pediatrician that wasn't particularly versed in that. And we know a lot more about it now than we did then. And so when you say that he has that, you've done the responsible thing and had him diagnosed by the right kinds of professionals. But even ADD and ADHD are not a singular disorder. There are subsets of this, and there's neurology that underlies this, and some of them involve a sleepy cortex, some of them don't. But yet there's one medication, and if you give it to the wrong subset, it's like throwing gas on a fire. It'll just cause them to explode in their behavior. Here's a video of Megan's son that she sent me as an example of his behavior.
You know what?
Be nice. Hey, yeah!
Are you recording me?
No.
Why are you recording?
Stop.
Why?
Stop. Be nice.
Why?
Because you're being silly, that's why.
Is this for Dr. Phil?
Just to show him your energy.
I have so much energy, Dr. Phil!
I get it. Megan says that when he was younger, he would throw toys at the dog and torture a lizard. And you say that he swats and kicks or plays rough with animals.
Swats at them or kicks
Yeah.
at them. He never makes contact.
Right. And we're talking about 4 dogs and 10 cats?
Not by choice, but yes. And
Oh, no, there's always a choice.
okay, fair enough. My parents passed and we inherited their animals.
I keep saying there's always a choice. I said there was a choice about your jobs, a choice about where your child is on the priority list. And I have to tell you, if you've got this kind of situation where you're trying to get something under control and you make a priority list, you would say that he's your top priority.
Absolutely.
But then you have a lot of competing priorities. Your jobs, money, of course, you got to pay the bills, you got to keep a roof over his head, you got to feed him. But then you've got 10 animals, 10 cats and 4 dogs in the house. This can create a lot of chaos, distraction, absorption of energy.
That's fair.
And listen, I'm a huge pet lover. I'm not about abandoning, I'm talking about responsibly rehoming these pets. If you need to have a singular focus on your son, there's always a choice. And I just can't imagine this child, running wild and out of control, and then there's 14 animals running around the house and troubles with finding childcare and supervision and all of that. Aren't you just worn out?
For the most part, yeah.
You're doing the right thing being here right now. Coming up, what did a scan of Megan's son's brain reveal? I've been talking about parenting, and this brain issue is a big thing. We're going to talk about those results later. But first, another mom medicating her twin boys who are only 3 years old. We're going to add them to this mix next, because we're going to differentiate between this nature-nurture controversy. How much of these problems are parenting? How much of them have to do with the brain? We'll be right back.
Our twins will try to rip things off of the shelf. They will scream.
I've seen the boys hit their sisters. I've seen them hit Cassie. I've seen him definitely hit each other.
We've exhausted all options of discipline.
Are children diagnosed and medicated too soon for ADHD? Now, I'm going to tell you, in my opinion, the answer is we have too many children on hyperactivity drugs in America. That doesn't mean that every child that's on that medication is wrongly on that medication. Some need these medications. There's no question about it. It helps some, makes all the difference in the world. But it's been given, in my opinion, indiscriminately. Now, Cassie says when her 3-year-old twin boys were 2, they had no sense of fear or danger and would destroy things in the house, punch, slap, and pinch her. She says they are now medicated for ADHD.
Our twins, CJ and Matthew, were diagnosed with ADHD in October of 2022. By the time they were 2 years old, they went 72 hours with no sleep. When I try to take my boys out to any type of store, they will try to rip things off of the shelf. They will scream. They will throw things out of the cart. It has actually been 4 months since I have taken them out in public. It started off with fits of rage, throwing themselves on the floor, hitting their heads into the cupboards, kicking their feet. A few months ago, Carl had been angry about his sippy cup not being filled up. Here. And he started kicking the TV stand. I eventually grabbed him and kind of bear hugged him. And at that point, he started screaming and kicking and biting and clawing at his face, slapping me, pulling my hair.
I've seen the boys hit their sisters. I've seen them hit Cassie. I've seen him definitely hit each other. I've spent a couple $1,000s on baby gates because of how fast these kids would break them.
We've exhausted all options of discipline. They were put on Ritalin in January of 2023. We wanted the doctors to give us alternatives to medication, but this is all we were given, and it barely helps.
Welcome.
Hi.
You've been listening to what we've been talking about here so far. Anything jumped out at you that we've been talking about?
Choices. Everybody has choices. That was a big thing for me when I was actually talking prior to the show. You know, a lot of people have choices, but I have noticed that I don't have a lot of choices. It feels like a lot of the times when I talk to doctors or pediatricians, most of the times they give me the options and I don't ever get to choose. So.
Well, you always get to choose. You may not be exercising the choice, but it's always your choice. No one knows your child better than you. And there are concerning behaviors. You'll put in child safety locks, for example. That just barely slows them down, right?
Doesn't even stop them anymore.
They've stayed awake for 72 hours at one point.
72 hours. And that was my breaking point. As I was exhausted, they were exhausted. They never took naps. We would take them for car rides and try to pass them out, and they wouldn't fall asleep.
That didn't work. And that always works.
It usually always works,
yeah, you
especially
take them for a drive, that vibration will get them. And you said they could really be aggressive. They headbutt the table and doors. They throw themselves backwards onto the floor or into the wall. They're throwing things at people, hitting their sisters in the head with like toys and cars and things like that. So, you know, I was saying, you're tired. You know, she's got 2 of them. And so you two understand each other.
Oh, yeah.
And if you tell them no, what's their response?
Their first initial response is to just start bloody murder screaming, kicking their feet. Actually, in one of the first videos, you saw him knocking the shoes off of the shelf. That was actually last week. He wanted his sippy cup filled. And I don't know if it's their medication. I don't know. But they just feel like they have to have their sippy cups filled as soon as it's emptied. Eventually, it turns violent. They start throwing the cups at things. They break TVs. They break other things throughout the house. They'll start attacking me, punching me, calling me names.
We're going to talk about what happened when the doctor said no when we come back. How much is ADD and how much of it is something else?
That boy is not just standing there running because he's ADD. He's anxious as hell.
Closed captioning provided by...
Now to a growing health concern. There's been an increase in Adderall prescriptions.
Due to the pandemic, the government temporarily lifted a rule requiring patients to have an in-person medical visit before they could get controlled substances. Now, medications like Adderall can be prescribed through online appointments.
These are dangerous drugs that are controlled for a good reason. It's a highly addictive drug.
Well, I've asked some top experts, and these are colleagues that I work with on a regular basis, weigh in on today's controversial subject of overdiagnosing and over-medicating ADD, ADHD. Now, Dr. Daniel Amen is a physician, child and adult psychiatrist, and founder of Amen Clinics with 11 locations across the United States, and a 12-time New York Times best-selling author. Now, his new book is Change Your Brain. Every day, simple daily practices to strengthen your mind, memory, and moods, focus, energy, habits, and relationships. Now, his mission is to end mental illness by creating a revolution in brain health because they're inextricably intertwined. There's no question about it. Also joining me is my dear friend and renowned psychiatrist, Dr. Charles Sophie. He has helped many families with this exact problem and discusses similar scenarios in his book, Family Values. And I welcome both of you.
Thank you.
And you've both been studying right along with me these two situations and scenarios. And let's talk first about choices. Dr. Sophie, we get in a lot to this nature-nurture controversy about is this biological? Is it environmental? And this isn't an either-or situation, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, nothing's one way or the other. But it also is impacting if you're a parent and haven't gotten yourself in check either. So I think you recently got treated?
I did. I was recently diagnosed with ADD as well and have been prescribed medication.
So until then, you're triggered by the same thing. So there's two people playing off each other. So I think a parent needs to get themselves in check first. But yeah, it's never one or the other.
Yeah, and how much of a child's behavior do you think is ADD, and how much of it is something else that might be happening, like anxiety, for example, or parenting, or a combination of those things?
I would honestly say at least 80% has to be a combination of several things. It can't just be one thing. And unfortunately, our medical model is backwards. We're looking at behavior and we're treating a symptom with medication that looks like it works on that symptom, but we're not really understanding what the problem is and understanding how the brain works, which is what he's doing. And then when we have that map, then we have a better plan to treat it. Right. Because it is anxiety. It is, that boy is not just standing there running because he's ADD. He's anxious as hell. Your kids are anxious when he's grabbing his face. He's frustrated. That's not all ADD. There's a lot of stuff going on here that we don't know and we're Band-Aiding.
Yeah, and that's not even typical of ADD, some of these behaviors that I'm seeing out of the twins. That's not even typical ADD behavior. It's typical of other types of anomalies, but...
He does also have conduct. CJ, the one that was grabbing at his face, he has ADHD and conduct disorder.
Yeah, maybe.
But the question would be, what does that mean?
What does it mean?
Obviously,
it's
their
a symptom
conduct
of
is not right, but why?
Right.
And I mean, that's what ADHD doesn't answer. Doesn't answer, well, why do you have it?
And you're taking these medicines, you don't know what side effects you're going to get, and then you're adding more problems and maybe chasing your, like, you've got to know what you're dealing with first.
Yeah, and you can't know that unless you know what's happening in the brain.
Right.
There are 7 different types of ADHD.
Of the 7, Ritalin and Adderall help 2 of the types, but they make 5 of the other types worse.
You say, for example, there are 7 different types of ADHD, correct?
Right. When I first started imaging in 1991, I was sort of looking for the one pattern that would describe it. But very quickly, I'm like, oh, it's not one thing. It's 7 different things. And of the 7, Ritalin and Adderall help 2 of the types, can be miraculous, but they make 5 of the other types worse, which is why it's a controversial drug.
Everybody hear what Dr. Amon just said. 7 different subtypes of ADD, but 1 medication. 2 of them it helps, 5 of them it exacerbates, it makes worse. Take us through these real quickly.
So the first one is classic: short attention span, distractibility, restlessness, impulse control. It's one everybody recognizes. The second one is often underdiagnosed. It's inattentive ADD. They tend to be spacey, unmotivated. They have sleepy brains. The third one is overfocused ADD. The problem is not that they can't pay attention, it's they can't shift their attention. Often oppositional, argumentative, things don't go your way, you get upset. And then temporal lobe ADD, 1 or both of their temporal lobes are problematic. Can give them reading problems, but also temper problems. And then limbic ADD, where their emotional brain works too hard, and it's like an underlying depression that's causing this. The ring of fire, which I think is so interesting, the problem's not low activity in the brain, it's high activity. And they often get diagnosed early. Stimulants often make them terrible. And it maybe there's inflammation in their brain, or it could be early bipolar disorder. And then there's anxious ADD, where their anxiety centers is driving the hyperactivity. So the first 2 types, classic and inattentive, stimulants can be very helpful. The other types, they tend to make them worse.
Mm-hmm. And Cassie, what happened when the doctor used the bad word, no?
Yeah, that was fun. He didn't just tell them no. He was trying to get a reaction out of them. He was trying to see exactly what he was working with. And he eventually started hiding under the table. He started throwing things in his office, throwing himself backwards, hurting himself, screaming at the doctor. And then he started coming over and attacking me, and I had nothing to do with it. It was a whole ordeal. Couldn't get him to calm down. And literally this is going to sound horrible because it's going to sound like my type of parenting, which I did not want to do on this show, was sometimes you just have to give in. And it really, really sucks because if not, he's just a raging ball of fury all day.
But you're just out of options.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's not that you don't know that giving in to tantrum behavior is a bad thing.
Terrible.
It's just there's a point at which it's like, we've got to get through this moment here.
I have 3 other kids to take care of at home. And, they are pretty great kids. They're very smart. They're very intelligent. But they also know when mom and dad say no, it means no.
You're both well-intentioned. You're doing the best you know how to do. You're saying, hey, love to do better, just tell me how. That's what you're saying. So you're saying, I hate to say I gave in. You did what you could do to get through the moment at the time. Right. You know it's not the best thing. Also joining us virtually is Cassie's boyfriend and father of the twins, Carl. Carl, how did the twins behave with you?
I mean, it all depends on what circumstance you're talking about. If, for instance, like if I go to take their cup from them because they're thirsty, and they want me to refill that cup again, they're going to freak out. They're going to scream. They're going to go crazy. They don't hit me. They don't throw stuff at me. I'm the only person they don't do it to.
That's actually a good sign, though, that there is some signal, there is one situation where they can modulate their behavior, which tells you that it's in their behavioral repertoire. They do have the ability to take their foot off the accelerator and back off a little bit. So, you know, that's encouraging, actually. So what did a scan of Megan's son's brain reveal? We'll talk about those results right after the break. Have you?
When I was a kid, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I was pretty much immediately put on medication. I just wish that instead of continuously upping my dose of medication, that they had taught skills, because when I got to college, I still had no ability to actually manage my ADHD symptoms. It was just medication, which isn't managing symptoms, it's just medication.
Are doctors overdiagnosing and over-medicating children with ADHD? Yes. The answer is hell yes. But that doesn't mean that among those massive overdiagnoses and over-medications are some that are spot on correct. We sent Megan's son to Amen Clinics to have a workup and take a look at the brain because we wanted to find out, you know, what's really going on with this, because this is not a psychological, just behavioral sort of scenario. And we want to talk about what we found out. So, Dr. Raymond, what did you learn?
So we do a study called brain SPECT imaging, and SPECT looks at blood flow and activity. It looks at how the brain works. And it basically shows us three things: good activity, too little, or too much. And then we compare it. We now have a database of 225,000 scans. And
that would roughly be the largest database in the world.
I think so.
Yeah.
And
just saying.
What we saw, compared to his age, his brain is working way too hard. This view, we're looking at the outside surface of this brain, and his brain actually looks pretty healthy on the outside surface. Now, if we go to the next one, red and white are the most active parts of the brain. So blue is average, red is the top 15%, white is the top 8%. So healthy on the left for his age, your son on the right. And if you see all the white toward the top, if you look at the top left image, all that white means his frontal lobes are on fire. And then if you go to the bottom, so just look at the top left image, go to the bottom, his cerebellum looks sort of broken up compared to a healthy brain. So he's not processing and he's getting stuck. Not processing, getting stuck. Things don't go his way, he explodes. And so the goal is to calm down his brain and then activate his cerebellum so he processes better. But if you're on 5 medicines and he's not dramatically better, it's the wrong cocktail of medicine. So we would agree with that. And it doesn't mean, you know, medicine or no medicine. I always tell my patients, the goal isn't medicine or no medicine, the goal is your best functioning. And we always want to do it in the least toxic, most effective way.
His brain is not signaling him. It's not processing information from the outside, being processed by him, and then he's just saying, man, watch what she does when I do this. That's not the case.
What causes that?
Well, it's a matter of how his brain has come together. Why it's that way, there can be a lot of reasons, and maybe that will inform what to do about it. Maybe it won't. But the important thing is that you know this is very important information as to why he's behaving the way he's behaving. Now, here's the good news. This is all treatable.
Oh, yeah. All of it.
You can make the brain much healthier.
Because what we saw is he doesn't have a damaged brain. He just has a brain that's not functioning right. And so if we can balance it, he is going to be so much better. And it's not just medicine, right? I mean, for both of this, it's like we have to talk about food, because food is medicine or food is poison. And the crap that's out there for children, especially in schools, is actually increasing behavior problems. Or is there some toxin in the environment? I was thinking about that with your kids. They're so out of control. It's like, is it a toxin? Is it infection? ADD is what it is, but it's not why it is. And if you don't understand why, you can't effectively treat it right.
Yeah. And if that's the thing, if Cassie doesn't know what's going on with her twins' brains, then she or even a well-meaning physician, if they don't have that information, they're just trial and error.
No one ever did any type of brain scan.
I've said there's always a choice. These two have made one. We're going to talk about what that adds up to when we come back. You know what I like most about me? Is I have really smart friends. Really smart friends. And I've said there's always a choice. And I also said I'm not here to throw moms under the bus or parents under the bus, because I seldom meet a parent that doesn't want to have a happy, tranquil family life and see their kids flourish and do well. And when I study your situation and your situation, it's very clear that you two are in great pain and that you want the best for your children and for your family. And I said, there's always a choice. I was saying there's a choice. You don't have to have the jobs you have. You can take other jobs and have the time to deal with your children. You can de-pet yourself, at least a dozen or whatever. There's always a choice. And you made a choice to reach out and come here. I hope you're glad you did.
So
you made a choice to reach out and come here, and I hope you're glad you did. Dr. Amen is here, and Dr. Amen, I'm going to ask him to follow up with you and help you with your twins the way he's helped you with your son. And he will do that because I know him, and he's a giving sort of guy, and fair enough.
Yeah, if you don't know why. And it's unfortunately, psychiatrists are the only medical doctors who never look at the organ they treat. And this is what I've been fighting with for 30 years. It's like, depression's not one thing. OCD is not one thing. Giving this one treatment fits everybody's insane.
I want to thank all of my guests today. These folks are in the right hands now, and if you want to learn more about this, just go to drphil.com, and we'll be talking more about it, and I'm going to have links to both of these gentlemen here. Dr. Charles Sophie book, Family Values, is out. It was an instant bestseller, and really, particularly coming out of the pandemic and everything that people have been through, this is an important guide, and it's I highly recommend it. This is something that you need to have in your home, you need to read, you need to share with your family. It's going to stimulate you to sit down and talk about a lot of things. So Dr. Sophie, thank you.
Thank you.
Also special thanks to Dr. Daniel Amen. You're going to want to read his new book, Change Your Brain Every Day. Simple daily practices to strengthen your mind, memory, moods, focus, energy, habits, and relationships. This is something that's going to make you change the way you think about how you function and the things you can do in your daily life to affect the way you function. And don't forget to check out my podcast, Fill in the Blanks, with clinical psychologist and New York Times best-selling author, Dr. Shefali. We discuss valuable techniques for parenting as well. You don't want to miss that. And be sure to listen to I've Got a Secret with Robin McGraw and find out the secret to humanizing your workplace with Erica Keswin. Subscribe to both on just wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, just wherever. Thanks for being here. Really think about what we talked about today. The face of mental illness and how you think and conceptualize it is changing. Be on the front edge of that. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.